So here's my cruise control dimmer circuit. When I went and pulled the parts for this cruise control, I forgot to pull the connector. This dimmer goes inside this plastic case and it attaches to the back of the gauge cluster right here. I pulled the gauge cluster, but I forgot to get this connector. So when I went back to the yard to try and get that connector, the car was gone, and the only other car that had this blue connector, which is a special shape, it only fits, it's got to be that shape, and it only fits the cruise control plug. The only one there was from an 88 SI that had cruise control, and the dimmer circuit on the 88 is completely different. So this plug only had 2 wires going into it. So it won't work with my system because the dimmer circuit's different. So I reverse engineered the diagram and had to figure out which wire goes to which pin on this connector so that I could put the pins that were missing. In the diagram, in the circuit diagram, this is from ALLDATA DIY. This has 5 wires, but on the circuit board, not all 5 wires are actually connected to anything. The pin number 3, so luckily the board is labeled 1 to 5, so I knew which pin was pin 1. Pin 3 is not actually connected to anything on the board. I mean, you can see most of this board is not populated. So I don't know what pin 3 is supposed to go to, but it goes to nothing, goes to empty pads. So it wasn't just figure out which wires go where, is figure out how does the circuit actually work and what does it need. And I discovered that this red-black wire and this yellow wire are actually redundant. It's giving it the same thing. Red-black is also hot in runner start, and yellow is hot in runner start. So it's sending it power twice, even though it doesn't need that. It doesn't need 12 volts from 2 places. So I need to test this before I commit to wiring it into the harness, because I have to wire this into the dash harness. So what I've got figured out is I'm gonna plug this in. I need a modulated voltage on the red wire, ground, 12 volt power on yellow, and then a ground signal. This goes to the cruise control module. Cruise control module grounds that pin when it turns the light on. So that turns the light on. This sends power to a PNP transistor, which also is wired through resistor to the collector. So the emitter and collector are wired together. So as soon as it's powered, it turns itself on immediately, so long as current can flow to the base. And then the base has 2 wires attached to it. My discovery, or my theory, and I've tested it already just to make sure before I made this video, and I'm right. So when the red wire is supposed to be a modulated voltage coming from this little box, which is the dash light dimmer control box, and it basically it raises the voltage on the red wire to decrease the voltage potential between yellow and red. So you end up with, it's basically like raising the ground wire voltage up, which makes the lights less bright. So as this voltage is 0, let's say with the dimmer all the way as low as it goes, right? As close to 0 as the dimmer can get. That would make the difference between the red and yellow wire the biggest, which would mean the lights are the brightest. So when this has a low potential, it's going 1K to ground, which turns the transistor on all the way. As the dimmer switch is turned, it raises the potential here, and there's diode here, so it can't feed back through the transistor. It raises the voltage at this point, and the 1K resistor prevents too much current flowing through and burning up this resistor. But it raises this point, which slowly like decreases the amount of on that this transistor is, turning this less on, making the light less bright. Now, I don't have a modulated voltage because I don't want to completely figure out how to wire this up on the bench. I need to test this before I wire it in. So what I figured is that what I can do is I can mimic full bright and full dim by just connecting this to positive. So that would be like if the red wire had the highest voltage it could have versus the red wire is at the lowest voltage it could have, which is 0. So when it's at the lowest voltage, this will just be going to ground and it'll be full bright. And then when I connect it to 12 volts, this will be at the highest it can be and it'll be at full dim. And I have, this is supposed to be the signal wire going to the module. That's just connected straight to ground because that's what the module does. The module grounds that wire. So it's when you push the cruise control button, or like when the cruise control is on, the module grounds that and turns the light on. And then if I test this wire, it should go to bright or dim. So let's try it. And I have my bench supply like set to a low voltage just for like precaution's sake. So this should be full bright. And here we go. It's on. And then if I take the red wire and connect it, zoom out, connect it to ground, it gets dim, bright, dim, bright, dim. So I got it wired right.